everyone, my name is Nick and welcome back to my devlog series. At the end of my previous devlog, I took a look at what it would look like to have some lights and shadows in my scene and coming off my character as it moves around the fire. So I really like the way this kind of looks, so I thought it would be cool to add some more lights to the scene, and I decided to do that by adding some fireflies going around the trees. So to do that, I added a bug scene, which is basically an area 2D with a collision shape, a light, and an animated sprite. And the animated sprite has 2 frames of animation just sort of looping really quickly. So this is the exact same bug I used in my previous tutorial, the one with the Y sort. And in that tutorial, you can learn how to actually get your path 2Ds following your Y sort or behaving according to your Y sort. So I'm not going to go into that here. I'll just show you what it looks like. So I think it looks pretty cool. There's definitely some polish I think that I need to add as I figure out more about how to use lights in the engine, but it looks pretty cool. And really, as soon as I saw this, I started to get more ambitious. I began to think about the actual gameplay applications that could result from having these fireflies sort of flying around in a field, around some trees, and behind things. And I started to picture a full game based on sort of maybe catching fireflies or something similar to a bunch of lights moving around the scene. So as I thought more and more about what I could actually do to turn this little demo project into a fuller, more complete game, I basically started drawing a lot more sprites, and this was pretty fun. I was just thinking about what I could do to make it interesting for the player to walk around the relatively small area that I have. So I drew some fence posts, some tree stumps. I updated the visuals for some of my previous sprites. Here you can see this log has a bit more detail, and detail is something I'm going to have to think about going forward because I want to keep my art style fairly consistent. I don't want any one sprite to look like it comes from a different kind of game. But anyway, I'll definitely be iterating on that as I go forward and drawing more sprites for the more complete game that I'm putting together. So we have my plants as well. I updated these sprites a little bit, added a new kind of style of the similar kind of plant with a bit more detail in it. And we have a big bush now. We have some fresh tomatoes, because one of my ideas was to have a little garden in the first area where the player can walk around. And of course we have some carrots and some lettuce. What garden would be complete without carrots and lettuce? We have a little dirt patch where the actual carrots and lettuce are going to sit, as well as the tomatoes. And we have 2 different kinds of trees. So I think one of the things I can probably do is use something like canvas modulate, or modulating individual sprites anyway, to change the sort of hue of the trees, so I can get a lot of variation by using only a couple different sprites. So in addition to the updated sprites and the new sprites, we also have 3 separate areas that I want the player to walk through. So previously there's only one area with a few trees, some patches of grass, but now I want there to be sort of distinct regions that the player can walk around in, and even then they're not that big, but I want to spread the gameplay across these 3 spaces. So there's going to be story elements that make the player have to explore each one of these areas, and I'm going to keep it relatively small at first and try to have as much fun as I can within these spaces. So since I had my new sprites, the next step was to actually add all those sprites into the Godot engine and use them to build each scene that I wanted to add to the areas that I want my player to be able to walk around in. For each of the areas that I want my player to walk around in, the first thing I did was add my nested Y sorts, And I really wanted to make sure I got this right in the beginning because there's going to be quite a lot of sprites, and I want to make sure that they all behave according to their Y sorts properly. Now at this point in the game, or developing the game, none of the sprites have shadows, and I'm going to look into a couple different ways to actually accomplish this. I might just sort of bake the shadows in other words, just actually make sprites and paint them onto the background so that they're not real time or anything like that. That would definitely improve performance, and it will still probably look similar since this game is 2D, so I'm probably going to try a couple of options for whatever that solution is going to be. One of the things I was originally considering was having sort of one giant area that wasn't broken up into 3 distinct smaller areas, but I thought it would be cool to have 3 distinct areas that required loading different scenes when you moved between them, just so I could practice adding in things like a loading screen and different sort of scene transition effects and things like that. So since the last area of the game that the player can access is going to be where most of the gameplay takes place, I'm really going to try to focus on maximizing what I'm able to accomplish with the relatively small space that the player has to walk around in. And with all of these areas, I'm definitely going to be iterating and coming up with different designs as I sort of play test, and we'll just see what I come up with over the course of development. So one thing you can definitely notice as I walk through the different areas is that there seems to be a lot of jitter with the sprites. I'm not really sure what causes this. I'm gonna have to look around for some solutions. So hopefully that's not gonna be too much of a problem. I hope it doesn't have anything to do with like the size of the sprites that are moving around, because I don't really remember seeing any other top-down sort of 2D adventure games with sprites that are this big. A lot of them are pixel art, but who knows? I'll just take a look and see what I can find. So just like in the older version of this map that I showed you at the beginning of the video, I added in my fireflies into this version. The sort of large field that the player has access to is going to be where most of the gameplay takes place, and I think that's going to revolve around catching fireflies, or at least at this point. So I thought that would be a fun mechanic. I guess I'll see what that's like when I get deeper into sort of programming the actual gameplay. But for right now, it looks kind of cool, so I'm hoping it translates into something that's interesting for the player to actually do. So in this version of the field, the fireflies are actually all sitting on top of the sprites that they're moving around. So they're not actually in a Y-sort. I thought it would be a little bit weird to try to program things like Y-sort into the gameplay that involves swinging a net around to catch fireflies. I might be able to fix that as I actually get into developing it, but for now I thought it would look a little funny, so I just went with something simpler and left all the fireflies floating on top of things as opposed to going behind things. And last but not least, the house is going to play a part in the story. I'm not exactly sure what yet, but I wanted to try to make something that looked like a tile roof house. So I basically built out components of the house, things like planks of wood, siding, and the actual tiles for the roof, and then just copied and pasted them and sort of built and put them together like you would an actual house. So the house itself is really placeholder artwork for right now, and I think with a lot of this artwork I'm going to have to go back through and do it again just to make sure it looks sort of cohesive and is as detailed or not detailed as I want it to be. But for now, just to give myself like an idea of what this will look like in the final version, the house does a pretty good job, I think. Alright everyone, I think that does it for this video. Thank you for watching. I really have a lot more work to do, but at this point it's starting to feel like an actual game and it's starting to get fun. So I'm really going to have to focus on actual development and refining the gameplay, whatever that ends up being, as I begin testing it. So in future videos I'm going to focus more on coding and refining my art style and making sure everything looks as cohesive and as much like a full complete game that I would want to release as possible. And as for releasing it, I think I'm going to try to do that on something like itch.io, and I'm going to try to release this for free and maybe with like a donate whatever amount you feel comfortable with model, but definitely for free. And since this is really like me learning as I go and learning by doing as I build this in the engine, it's been a good experience, and it's mostly for me to understand what I need to do in order to produce an actual longer, more commercial game that I would release on a platform like Steam, which I still plan to do at some point in the future after I release this one. But in any case, thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and maybe consider subscribing, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks!